Alrighty, let's head on out of here. So we'll say bye to the kuti. This is most likely the last time that I will be in this kuti, at least for the foreseeable current future. This is now morning time, 2 days later. And I have been sleeping. Once the evening comes, I come back to the kuti and I will meditate and then sleep and then meditate when I wake up. And so, now we see as the light is coming in. On the first day, well, like the last 10 days that I was in here, I began coming out into these outer hallways, helping the eyes to acclimate and whatnot. And so the first time I looked out of that window after several months being inside, and the first time it was a moon, it was nighttime, and so I could just see the outlines of things, and it was like, oh my gosh, what is this? So now we can see Kupta in the morning. The beauty of nature's glory. So, I think what I will do right now is actually to first discuss meditation a bit. As mentioned, the meditation was the biggest thing that I was doing in there. Here's what I was talking about. Water storage up here. These collect solar heat, goes in. So I have shared several videos in the past discussing meditation in some way, and meditation is something that I have more experience than I did in the past, but I'm not a teacher. I'm nowhere near a master. I would consider myself a beginner with some experience, So I will share some of my current understanding. And I say current because that understanding is different than it was several years ago. And it will, I would say 99.999% be different than in a couple more years. These little things are just another interesting part of nature. There are these seeds, and you walk on them barefoot. They're not the most comfortable, but they are interesting how nature does it. So things have definitely changed for me with meditation since the last time I recorded, which was in August. No, it was in June of last year, June of 2022, and I had just come out of my fourth Goenka Vipassana retreat, and so I was practicing that practice, and subsequently, a month later, I connected with this practice, and after experiencing a retreat, I chose to change and to dedicate the next year to this one, exploring it. So I'll share, but first I'll just give another little background on meditation itself. Now, the meditations that I am practicing is taught by Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha. Buddha meaning awakened one. So Buddha is a title. It's not his name, but he was living around between 25 and 2600 years ago. I don't remember the exact amount. And he never claimed to be anything except a human being who at some point in his life, I believe it was his late 20s, he realized that there is so much suffering, that he is experiencing so much suffering. And so he left his life and his family and entered the homeless life of a spiritual aspirant with the desire to find a better way, basically, because he recognized that he was creating his own suffering with the ways that he was thinking. And so subsequently, for some years, until his mid-30s, he was doing all sorts of different practices. Back then in India, there's a lot of wisdom, and spirituality was very deep, the exploration of the inner and the cosmos and the world beyond just the visual and the physical. So he explored many different things with all the different teachers of the day, both of meditation and of different ascetic practices, very intense fastings and other sorts of physical. And ultimately, he found that none of those were providing what he wanted. And then he remembered back to this time that he was a child sitting under a tree, watching his father in sort of like a town fair or something like that. And he remembered how his mind dropped into this tranquil, happy, relaxed state. And, by this time he has trained his mind a lot. He has lots of ability with his mind. And so he thought maybe this is the way. And he explored that. And he found that, yes, this is the way. So in his teaching, the teaching is mainly, it's called the Four Noble Truths are the core of it. First noble truth is there can be suffering in the world. Second noble truth is there is a cause of that suffering. The cause, in simple terms, being desire or craving. Whether it is that I'm craving for something, like, I want to have a pizza right now, but I don't have it. So there is pain. Pain exists. If I'm walking down and I stub my toe, there's going to be pain. That's not the suffering we're talking about. The suffering that I'm talking about is when I kick the stone and I feel the pain, and then I'm walking for the next 20 minutes saying, who the heck put that stone there? I can't believe it. I'm so stupid. I kicked the stone. I've kicked the stone all my life. What's so wrong with me? I'm such a loser. That's the suffering. So that would be the aversion. There is that aversion. And then there's the suffering from craving, which I was just mentioning of, I want a pizza, but I don't have it. I wish I had a pizza, but in India, there's so few pizzas, and I'm here in India, and I can't get a pizza, and I really want a pizza. Or else we get the pizza, I get the pizza, and I'm like, this pizza's so good, but it's done now, and I want more of it, and I don't want it to go away. So these two constitute craving in general. As Bhante Vimalaramsi, one of the teachers of Twimala, says, it's the I like it, I don't like it mind. So we've got the first two noble truths. Then the third noble truth, beautiful, there is a cessation to suffering. And the fourth one is there is a path to that cessation. There is a way to intentionally bring about the releasing of suffering. And so in the Buddha's teachings, it goes very deep. It's very simple in many ways, but very deep, and so it's called the Noble Eightfold Path, which goes into every aspect of life. Right speech, right actions, right livelihood. Right in this context, not meaning like, right just meaning, what is my desired end state? If my desired end state is to be free of suffering, then does this bring it about or not? If I speaking coarsely and roughly to people, does that bring about the cessation of suffering? No, that makes them feel bad, and then they're subsequently interacting with me roughly, and then I'm feeling bad. Okay, so that would be wrong. It's just not taking me where I want to go. It's not like a judgment call or something. I'm not sure if it will be so loud over there. So it goes into that, and in that it is, all right, well, that's great, do right speech, do right actions, do right livelihood, and these other ones. Okay, great, but how do I do that? Because I'm walking around in life and someone says something to me and I take it personally, and subsequently I'm feeling upset. How do I change that? Because I keep telling myself I want to change. Well, there are different ways, but the main one that he taught was through meditation. And so that goes into why do I practice meditation. There's two main reasons. The first one is mental purification, and the second one is mental development. And what does that mean to me? Mental purification, I've gone throughout life now for 39 years. I had my birthday in the Kuti. It was a special day too, a 10.5-hour meditation, the longest of my life. And so I've been ingesting unconsciously, as I was mentioning before, watching all of these movies that are so violent or so hypersexual or making fun of people or in some way conditioning me to feel insecure or weak or disempowered, or all of these different things. I've got all of these billions of different little pieces of data in the mind somewhere. So mental purification means to let go of that. Not that it's going to go away, but that the automatic response, unconscious automatic response of reactions or cravings or whatever, that those are released, and the new positive through mental development of the new positive, okay, this is how I intentionally respond when things happen in a more peaceful and a more tranquil way. So that's the main reasons. What does it do for me? It brings me, I experience much more peace. I have a lot less super highs and super lows. In the Western world, currently, we're in a bit of a place of pathologizing things. And so one term that we may be familiar with is manic depression, and I'm familiar with that, both experiencing it in my own life and with other people that I care about. When we think about that, it's these ups and downs, the extreme mania and then the extreme depression. But if I look at my own life, that is, I experience that all the time. Like I may not be diagnosed from the DSM-4, or the whatever, 4 was when I was in college, it's probably like the 10 now. I may not have a diagnosis currently, but I experience it. I'm in relationship and this is so wonderful, and then something happens that's pretty small and all of a sudden I'm upset, and I'm feeling so bothered, and then I'm feeling really good about myself because I did this, and then I realize, I just kicked the stone and I'm feeling so upset. And so what the Buddha teaches is that everything is due to cause and effect. Everything. Now there are different terms for it. One term is dependent origination, because he dove very deeply into not just saying cause and effect, but actually what is happening in the moment to moment. I won't go deep into that. I'll put some videos, but an example, one portion of dependent origination is we have this mind-body complex. We have the 6 senses, as I said: visual, auditory, smell, gustatory, tangibles, touch. So we've got the eyes and the eye objects, hearing, ear and the hearing, the nose and the smell, the tongue and the taste, the body and the tangibles, and the mind and the mind objects, like a thought or a memory or an imagination or something like that. So we have these 6. And at some point there is contact with something. So right now, my finger just contacted the skin. I feel that tangibly. Right now, there's a sound and it contacts with the eyes the ears, and I hear. Or, as we think I had never heard of the mind being considered a sense before coming to this teaching. But if we think about it, how many times are there thoughts that arise in the mind that I didn't choose? Actually, being in darkroom provides a lot of opportunity to explore that and see. It's very often, it's many times, it's the mind's just bubbling up, and these are due to many reasons that probably most we don't really know. But if I've been ingesting all of this information, I've had all of this contact before, and then the mind just kind of bubbles it up. What the Buddha says, when there are the past causes, cause and effect, and then we're in the appropriate conditions. So for whatever reason, when I was a child, I walked on the beach, and so some thought just bubbles into the mind about that beach. You know, I've been on thousands of beaches, but for whatever reason, the causes and conditions are right to remember that beach in Upper Peninsula of Michigan, you know, like, so, and then when we have an unskillfully trained mind, that bounces. So without having mindfulness or awareness of what we're doing, which comes about through the mental development of the meditation, then we don't realize that the mind is bouncing, and we get to this place where, wait a minute, I was just thinking about this beach, and now how am I thinking about watermelon? Like, how did I get to watermelon? Where does that come from? And so we think, oh, the mind is crazy or whatever. But this is just an example of unskillfully trained mind. This is just mind doing what its nature is. I wouldn't get upset at this stick not acting like a stone, because it's not the nature of a stone, it's the nature of a stick. And so it's the same with the nature of the mind to have thoughts coming up. The nature of attention is to go wherever there is something that draws the attention. And so when we're in meditation, as I used to think, and I often hear other people, oh, well, my mind is so crazy, it just bounces all around, I can't control it. Well, yes, that is the nature of an unskillfully trained mind. And I don't say an untrained mind, because everything that I am doing is training. That everything that I am taking in, everything that I am experiencing from all the six senses is training me, is training the mind in some way. And so if I'm ingesting, this is just my personal opinion, this is just the way that I currently live. If I'm ingesting lots of violence through movies and songs and video games and thoughts and, you know, actions, well, then it's not surprising that I may, or if I'm in a culture, let's say, who does a lot of that, it's not surprising that there may be lots of violence out in that culture, or that I may, when someone does something like driving down the road and they turn in front of me, instead of seeing that as, oh, that human being must have needed to take a turn, cool, you know, continuing on, no impact. I see it as, oh, they cut me off, that jerk, because I have trained my mind to see things in this aggressive and violent way. And so everything that I'm doing is in some way training. That's why I say an unskillfully trained, because a skillfully trained is to recognize in the Buddhist teaching that none of this is personal. Everything that happens, it's just happening from cause and effect. I'm here on this beach because in the past there was the cause of me walking here. I'm here in India because in the past there were infinite different causes. We don't even need to know them. It's not important to know. What is important, in my opinion, is to understand that that's what happens, and then it gives lots of power. And we don't have to worry about, this is just some magical thing that's out of my control and I'm doomed forever, this is how I am or whatnot. No, I'm here. In the past, I had challenges with alcohol, and I had challenges with sexual addiction. I had challenges with depression. I had challenges with anger. And I used to think that that is how I am. I have been born this way. Maybe it's due to genetics, but it's just due to this thing that this is how I am. And so it was very demotivating and a bummer, lots of hopelessness. And so subsequently, I was building the habit of feeling depressed about that. I was building the skill, I was training the mind to feel depressed and to feel disempowered, that I cannot do anything because these things are out of my control. Subsequently, I began exploring. I had different experiences with psychedelics and with other things, and just reading and experimenting on my own, saying, well, that's strange. If I can change, if I can adjust, for example, physical abilities, why can't I adjust the mental? Why are these mental things considered disorders, anxiety disorder, depressive disorder, or treatment-resistant depressive disorder, or obsessive compulsive disorder? Why are these things considered to be permanent? And yet, if I picked up a basketball and I began dribbling, and I'd never dribbled before, and I'm dropping the ball all over the place, I can't dribble whatsoever, and I go to a physical therapist, and he diagnoses me, well, you have poor dribbling disorder. That's how you are. You're doomed. You have poor dribbling disorder. I wouldn't believe that, thankfully. Maybe if I had grown up in a place where everyone believed that, then I would. But thankfully, I have grown up in a place where I know that if I practice and if I train, it's not some magical thing that is occurring. The brain, the mind, there are these connections that are occurring. It's being trained. Okay, we can do this. I believe I can do it. Then I learn how to do it, and then these things become automatic. And so that is what I have found personally, is also with the mind. Now, with the mind, we're using it many more times. Even if I'm dribbling a ball 10, 12 hours a day, I'm going to get really good at dribbling a ball. If I'm dribbling a ball 12 hours a day, I'm going to be rather incredible at dribbling a ball. However, I'm using the mind 100% of the time. Even in sleep, it's being used. And I see the difference in my dreams now than when I was ingesting and I was training my mind in this unskillful way compared to now. The mind is being used continually. And so just imagine how good I would be at dribbling a ball if I was dribbling it continually. Well, that's what the mind is doing, except generally it's doing it with unskillful, disempowering, negative ways. And so is it any surprise that we're very good at those? It's not like the mind is evil, or the mind is has its own agenda. It's just doing what it does. It's a process. It's a thing of training and getting better at whatever it does. And so if I give it this food, this nutriment, it's going to get better at that. And so that brings lots of hope for me, but it also means that it's probably going to take a little while to change these things, because if I've been ingesting and I've been practicing in these depressive, negative ways, and it's been happening, under the radar for thousands and thousands of hours over decades, or hundreds of thousands of hours. I'm not sure how many hours are in a 10 years. But anyway, if it's been happening like that, let's just think of the same as if I was dribbling a basketball for 20 years nonstop. My abilities would be preposterous. But that's what we've been doing with our mind. So that's why I use meditation. This is why I use all the other things. I use the little reminder, the little cards, and I use what I watch and the people that I am with and the type of foods and drink that I have, because those definitely affect the amount of neurotransmitters and things. To go into a little bit more scientific, and the science, of course, we can never fully understand anything, because if we understand it, it can only be experienced. But science is doing a great job in some ways, and it has a long way to go. But my understanding of, let's say, emotions. So before, a few years ago, when I was in the more Western world of personal development and visualization and that sort of thing, I was learning from Dr. Joe Dispenza, if you may have heard of him. And in one of his books, which is Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, which is a nice name. In other words, how can I change? He shares about emotions. And previous to that, I had just considered emotions as this anomalous, who knows what they are. They're just a thing that's out of my control, and it's a thing, like an emotion. This is sadness, boom. This is happiness, boom. And I also as many of us, I had a very small vocabulary for it. How you doing? I'm doing good. What you feeling? Man, not so good. Okay, good, not so good, happy, sad, few of these, but there's a diaspora of emotions that exist, and being in a dark room gain a lot of clarity on that. The benefit of understanding that there's a diaspora and putting those words into the vocabulary allows me to unlock a lot more experiences. Previously, things that I thought were, yeah, I like that, what I realize now is that it was just a really intense experience, and I'm just going from these extremes. I'll share more about that when I go into the meditation. But back to Dr. Joe, what I learned from some of his books and then looking into it in other resources after is that emotions, of course, there's many different things, we don't fully understand them, but to put simply, they are this combination, this recipe of different hormones. As I said, hormones are incredibly powerful. Different hormones, different neurotransmitters, things like that, from the chemical sense. There's a lot more going on, but from the chemical sense. These are released by different glands in the body, different ways. And these are very much impacted by our diet and things, which are very much impacted by processed food and petroleum and whatnot. So at some point, these different chemicals are released, let's say when I stub my toe on the stone. There is these different chemicals that release where I feel bad, I feel sad. There's the pain. That's an electrical signal that says, hey, something happened, look down there. Okay, I got it. But then I have this story of, I'm so stupid, I always do this. And so that releases these different chemicals. And these different hormones, these different things. Over a period of time, these they don't just hang out and like magically change my feeling. Those different hormones go to the different cells. The cells have these little receptors. They take those in. It's communicating information. Sadness is not a bad thing and happiness is good. They're just different pieces of information. And so the cells accept these in the receptor sites, and over time, of course, cells aren't living for hundreds of years. They're replicating and passing away and replicating and passing away. And so over time, they evolve. They grow, they change, just like I do when I'm in different environments. I exercise, my muscles get bigger. The same with them. They are exposed to these depressive hormones and chemicals over and over. They create more receptor sites to them because they understand, okay, these chemicals must be important because we keep getting fed them over and over. And so let's prioritize these and let's deprioritize these other ones of happiness and positivity or, self-confidence or whatever, because we're not getting those anymore. So those must not be important. It's not a good or a bad thing. It's just a process, it's not personal. And so over time, these evolve to have lots more of those receptors. Well, then at some point, I'm with family or I'm on the beach, like having fun with a loved one or take a vacation. I get out of that environment of depression and whatnot where I had been, and I'm having fun and I'm having a great time. But the mind keeps going back to this depression, and I'll feel good and then I'll think about something and I'm so stupid, I'm so idiot. It keeps going back to this, and it's not because I am a depressed person like for the rest of my life. These cells have been used to getting these depressive emotions. They believe that they're important. They believe that these chemicals are important because they've been getting them, and they evolved over generations to say these are important. We need to have X amount of these coming in. And now with the happiness, those types of chemicals are not coming in. And so the cells, like, what's going on? So it's a closed loop system. Obviously the body and the mind are incredibly complex and amazing. And so the cells are also communicating back to the mind and to the glands, and they're saying, hey, we've got an issue. Normally we get all of these, we're not getting these, so please stop making those other ones. Please bring these back. And then they bring those back. That causes an emotion. If we are in meditation, we can see as we disconnect, there is the emotion, and then there's the story that I've created about that emotion. And so an emotion, let's say of sadness or depression, which are ones that I have had lots of experience with, this is an emotion. It brings about physical and mental sensations. So there are sensations in the body and in the mind that I feel when I feel depressed. These they don't mean anything. These are just the result of the chemicals. They're just sending some sort of message. But the message is whatever story I've created about them. And so the story is the mentally created thing, and that's the thing that the Buddha is talking about, suffering. And that story is, I'm doomed. I feel this depression. When I feel this depression, it feels bad, and I need to feel bad, and I need to have this inner dialogue about how I hate this, and life is terrible, and I'm always going to be like this, and that sort of thing. And I'm speaking from personal experience. But as we get some separation with meditation, which is providing some space from that, and using these tools, we gain what the Buddha called mindfulness, or we can think of it as awareness, as Bhante Vimalaramsi describes it. Remembering to observe how mind's attention moves from object to object, or from thing to thing, as I was saying, how it moves around. And so when I am observing how the mind is moving, then I observe that this physical sensation of the emotion of depression comes up, and the mind moves to it, and then a mind object arises, a thought. So there has been the contact of the mind, of the physical sensation with the mind. The mind recognizes, there's the perception that this is the emotion that I have labeled as depression, and then the mind object connected to that, the thought of depression, and the story arises, and then the mind starts going down that, and it's a closed loop, and it starts doing like that. So that is a bit of an explanation about what I mean when I say mental purification and mental development. The purification being the cleansing of these past habits. I get angry when this or that happens, or I feel depressed when this or that happens, or I feel lust and craving, when this or that happens, or I give in to those lust and cravings, or I give in to the feelings of depressions. That's the mental purification, and the mental development being gaining the stronger and stronger ability to see where the mind is going, and to, instead of being at the mercy of that, which I think many of us may identify with, of just like feels like I'm going crazy, or the mind's out of control, or I can't stop it, or what's the word where people don't sleep at night because I can't fall asleep because the mind is just always going in circles, or all of these things. I'm familiar with all of these things. Just you can think in your own life, are there any times during the day where you feel like the mind is out of control? That to me would be an example of an unskillfully trained mind. The mind has been trained to just be in reaction continuously. In a skillfully trained mind, one example, actually I'll stop this one because it's a bit long. Much love, and come back.